It's no fault of Elvis. He loved the song.
Elvis has nothing to do with it. He really liked the song. Dolly Parton is known as America's sweetheart and the undisputed queen of country music. Her voice and charm have won over hearts all over the world for decades. But behind her beautiful smile is a story that not many people have heard. It was full of tension, betrayal, and famous feuds that were never in the news. Everyone seemed to love her on stage and in front of the cameras. It seemed like they could never say anything bad about her. They smiled next to her at award shows and praised her in interviews. But things were very different behind the scenes. There were slammed doors, mean words, and friendships that hurt. One singer swore they would never work with her again. Someone else tried to take her biggest hit. Dolly tried her best to keep everything a secret. But now the truth has come out about the 5 singers she will never work with again. What really took place behind closed doors? Why are some of those old scars still open? You will never see Dolly Parton the same way again after you find out the truth. How she became a star is nothing short of amazing. Not many people know how dramatic she is behind the scenes, but she is known for her big blonde hair, sparkly clothes, and sweet voice that can melt hearts. Dolly has been through a lot. She started out as a very poor girl in rural Tennessee and is now one of the most famous singers in music history. People know her as the Queen of Kindness because she always makes things better. Some people in the business have been mean to Dolly, even though she is very nice. To figure out who Dolly had a problem with, you need to know more about her. A woman who tries hard to stay out of trouble but always ends up in the middle of it. She was born on January 19, 1946, in a small house with only one room in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. Her family had 12 kids and lived in a simple mountain house. They loved each other but had a hard time. Lee Parton, her father, worked hard as a farmer and building worker but couldn't read or write. But Dolly always said he was the smartest person she knew. The girl's mom, Avie Lee, had 12 kids before she turned 35. She taught Dolly to love stories, music, and faith. Music wasn't just a hobby for the Partons. It was a way to stay alive. Since they had no money for fun, the kids learned to sing in church and play together on the porch. Dolly's family saw how talented she was right away. When she was 10, she was singing on Knoxville radio and TV shows. And not long after that, she went on stage at the Grand Ole Opry. She packed her bags and left for Nashville the day after graduating from high school in 1964. She had no money or ties, but she had skill and big dreams. She began by writing songs for other acts. That wasn't enough for Dolly, though. She wanted the attention. Dumb Blonde was her first country hit, which came out in 1967. A smart song that showed she was more than just pretty. She joined the Porter Wagoner show that same year. After that, everything changed. Many people watched Dolly Parton light up their screens every week. Her duets with Porter Wagoner were instant hits because fans loved how well they worked together and how charming Dolly was. By the beginning of the 1970th second, she went out on her own and started a career that no one could stop. I Will Always Love You, a song that would go on to become a hit, came out after Jolene in 1973. Everything. Also, Whitney Houston sang it many years later, and it became one of the most famous songs ever. But don't get it wrong, Dolly still has the rights. Like any good person, she never brags about how much money that one song made her. By the 1980 seconds, Dolly was in a lot of movies, on the radio, and even on products. She wasn't just a country singer because she was in 925 with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. She made people laugh all the time. Then came Dollywood, her own theme park that opened in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, in 1996. Dolly built an amusement park to give back to her city and help the economy while other famous people bought yachts. But don't think that her kindness means she is naive. There aren't many smarter women in show business than Dolly. She has written a huge number of songs, won many Grammys and Lifetime Achievement Awards, and is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. For someone who grew up without running water, that's pretty good. She still gives back. Dolly has given away millions of books to kids all over the world through her Dream Library, making sure that every child can read. Dolly has kept up her image as sweet, humble, and above all, the drama over the years. But even a Southern angel has bounds. People who fought with her, didn't think she was good enough, or tried to take credit for her success are hidden behind the sparkle and smiles. One thing is certain, Dolly will never forget. Dolly Parton may have smiled through it all, but behind the scenes she had her share of fights, stress, and hurt feelings that time could never heal. One of the first and most complicated was with the man who helped her start her business and then tried to take it over. It was one of the most dramatic breaks in the history of country music when two strong artists decided to go their separate ways. Porter Wagoner versus Dolly Parton. Porter Wagoner was one of the biggest names in country music before Dolly became a worldwide star. Porter had a voice that could melt hearts and loads of charm, so he had a huge fan base. He was the star of The Porter Wagoner Show, which is one of the most famous country music shows on American TV by the 160 seconds. Porter wowed people on stage with his flashy clothes and friendly personality. He was smart, business-savvy, and very traditional when he wasn't on stage. He knew what people wanted, and when he met Dolly Parton, he saw something unique. Fans were not happy when Dolly replaced the much-loved Normani on the Porter Wagoner Show. Some people didn't like the change and booed her during performances, while others wrote angry notes. But Porter stuck by her and insisted she stay. Dolly, who was always kind and determined, kept her cool and focused on showing what she could do. They got along right away and became a team. Their duets were magical, and you couldn't deny how well they got along. They made over a dozen top 10 hits together and became one of the most popular country music pairs. They looked like a great team on camera, but there were cracks beginning to show behind those smiles. What's wrong? Porter wanted more than just to sing with Dolly. He wanted to be in charge of her job. He planned her shows, picked the songs they recorded, and made most of the important business choices. And for Dolly Parton, a strong, independent woman, that power wouldn't last. Always. She had more to her than just a pretty face and a nice voice. She wrote songs, thought deeply, and had her own dreams. Her goals went far beyond making duet records and appearing on TV shows as a guest. She put up with it for a while, but as her fame grew, she wanted to be on her own. The routine got old after a while, and Dolly began writing songs that didn't fit the Porter and Dolly style anymore. She just wanted easy, creative freedom and to be able to speak her own mind. However, Porter found it hard to give her that. Dolly later said that he didn't think of her as being on the same level as him. He gave her a stage at first, but it felt like a cage as time went on. Dolly didn't leave right away, though. She tried to work things out, even though she owed him a lot of money. That being said, by 1973, the strain was too great to ignore. In 1974, after a year, she finally left the Porter Wagoner Show. In public, it looked like a fun party, but behind closed doors, there was still a lot going on. Porter came back 5 years after she left, but this time she had lawyers with her. He sued Dolly for, he said she had broken their contract and owed him $3 million for management fees, show costs, and a share of her earnings after the show. Dolly was caught off guard. Porter had been an important part of her early career and a mentor to her, so the case hurt her deeply. Because that's just how she is, the disagreement got messy with press coverage, rumors, and tension spreading through the industry. Dolly wouldn't get dirty in a fight. She settled the case out of court in a quiet way. She later said she didn't want to fight him. Her only wish was to be free. The whole thing made her feel emotionally drained. Porter was an important part of her fame, and she still cared about him over everything. Even though they had done great things together, he just couldn't let her go. Dolly once said in an interview, "When I was trying to leave the show, I told Porter I'd stay 5 years. It had been 5, then 6, then 7. He just had such a hard time with it because it was going to mess up his show. We were so emotionally tied together, and he just wouldn't hear it." That confession said it all. Their fight was never just about money. It ran much deeper than that. It exposed a side of Porter Dolly had never seen before, and it broke her heart. Still, as time went on, things began to change. By the late 1980 seconds, after years of tension and silence, Dolly and Porter started to reconnect. Then in 2002, Dolly did something no one expected. She personally inducted Porter Wagoner into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Standing on stage, she spoke about how much he had meant to her, even through the hardest times. When Porter was hospitalized in 2007 with lung cancer, Dolly visited him, and just a few weeks later, he passed away. Dolly was heartbroken. She held a private tribute concert at Dollywood, not for publicity or praise, but for the man who had helped launch her dreams, even if he once tried to hold them back. That chapter with Porter Wagoner remains one of the most emotional and defining moments of Dolly's career, one that shaped her in ways most people will never truly understand. But the story doesn't end there. The next person on Dolly's list didn't just hurt her, she shocked the world. Dolly Parton versus Linda Ronstadt. Together with Emmylou Harris, they were the ultimate dream team. Three powerhouse women who joined forces to create the legendary trio album. Their voices blended like magic, producing timeless hits that still give chills to this day. Behind the scenes, things weren't as picture-perfect as they seemed, especially between Dolly Parton and Linda Ronstadt. What began as a musical sisterhood nearly fell apart in the mid-1970 seconds, turning into one of country music's most talked-about feuds. At the time, Dolly, Linda, and Emmylou Harris were already stars in their own right. They admired each other deeply and dreamed of creating something special together, but conflicting schedules and record label politics kept getting in the way. It wasn't until 1987 that their long-awaited album Trio was finally released. The record was an instant success. It went platinum, hit the top of the country charts, and even won a Grammy. On the surface, everything looked harmonious, but in the studio things were far from peaceful. Dolly, known for her quick and spontaneous style, liked to record songs in just 1 or 2 takes. Linda, on the other hand, was a perfectionist. She could spend hours fine-tuning every note. Emmylou often found herself playing the peacemaker between the two. Dolly later admitted that working with Linda felt like dealing with a studio diva who wanted to spend all day perfecting the smallest details. There were moments when Dolly said she wanted to yell at Linda out of frustration. Their creative styles just didn't mix, and the tension was obvious to everyone around them. Still, the trio gave it another try in 1994 with Trio 2, but record label disputes and scheduling issues delayed its release for years. When Trio 2 finally came out in 1999, the magic was there, but the friendship wasn't. The damage had already been done. What started as mutual respect and friendly competition between Dolly and Linda had turned sour. By then, Linda was openly expressing her frustrations, calling out Dolly's unreliability during the project. Their collaboration had made history, but it had also left behind a few scars. Linda Ronstadt didn't hold back when she spoke about Dolly Parton in an interview. She openly admitted that working with Dolly was frustrating, claiming that Dolly often canceled plans or showed up late to recording sessions. According to Linda, Dolly was never on time and came across as a little flaky, which made the collaboration difficult. But the issue went deeper than just tardiness. Linda felt that Dolly didn't fully respect the effort and dedication it took to complete the project. She believed Dolly was more focused on her solo career than on the group's work, and that attitude left a bitter taste between them. The tension that followed was strong enough to cause serious cracks in their partnership. Eventually, Linda made it clear she had no plans to work with Dolly again. She even said that Dolly's lack of professionalism had ruined what was supposed to be a fun, creative experience. Still, as the years went by, time softened some of the hard feelings. Despite all the drama, both women showed small signs of reconciliation. Even so, there was always a touch of awkwardness between them. It seemed neither of them truly forgot what happened. While they weren't openly hostile, they also didn't go out of their way to rebuild their friendship. The trio legacy still stands as one of the most iconic collaborations in country music. But behind the beautiful harmonies, Linda's words lingered, leaving a shadow over what could have been a lasting sisterhood. When you hear the name Elvis Presley, you think of the king of rock and roll, the man who transformed music forever. And then there's Dolly Parton, the queen of country, whose songwriting and storytelling have made her an icon. Both legends in their own right. They nearly came together once, but what could have been a historic collaboration ended in tension over one unforgettable song. It all started with Dolly's timeless ballad, "I Will Always Love You." Written in 1973, the song was deeply personal to her. It was inspired by her decision to leave her longtime mentor, Porter Wagoner, and step out on her own. What began as a heartfelt goodbye soon became one of the most beloved country songs ever written. A piece of Dolly's soul captured in every lyric. When the song was released, it quickly became a hit, cementing Dolly's place among the greats. What she didn't know, however, was that Elvis Presley's team had taken notice. The king himself wanted to record the song. By the mid-1000, 970 seconds, Elvis was still a dominant force in music, known for taking other artists' songs and turning them into instant classics. Naturally, Dolly was thrilled that Elvis wanted to cover her song, but there was a catch, a problem that would make things impossible. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's notorious manager, wanted a huge share of the publishing rights for any song Elvis recorded. This put Dolly in a tough spot. At the time, Dolly Parton was just starting to become known as a songwriter, but she knew her worth. When Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's notorious manager, demanded 50% of the publishing rights for any song Elvis recorded, Dolly refused to give in. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect for her craft. She had worked too hard to let anyone take advantage of her creativity. She told Parker, "This is the most important copyright in my whole publishing company, and I can't do that." The choice wasn't easy, and Dolly later said she was deeply hurt by it. She had a lot of respect for Elvis, but the deal felt unfair, like it was meant to take advantage of her. Dolly said Elvis was very upset that she turned it down because he really loved "I Will Always Love You," and had been excited to record it. Dolly said she felt terrible for turning him down, but she knew that compromising once would open the door for others to take advantage later. What began as a business disagreement soon turned into something much more personal. Though Dolly remained respectful, the fallout left a mark. She believed Elvis never fully forgave her for saying no, and it broke her heart. She later described him as a sensitive soul, saying that while he never confronted her about it, she could feel a change in their relationship afterward. In the end, though, Dolly's decision proved to be the right one. Years later, Whitney Houston's version of "I Will Always Love You" became one of the biggest songs in history, introducing it to a whole new generation and earning Dolly millions in royalties. Despite the tension with Elvis, Dolly has said she never regretted standing her ground. Turning down the king of rock and roll wasn't easy, but it was a moment that defined her strength, her integrity, and her belief in the value of her own work. Dolly Parton has always been known for her kindness, humility, and grace, a woman who rarely lets drama get to her. But in 2008, one managed to push her to the limit. Howard Stern, famous for his bold, controversial style, Stern had built his career on saying and doing things most people wouldn't dare. By the 180 seconds and 90 seconds, The Howard Stern Show had become a cultural phenomenon, loved by fans for its raw honesty and criticized by others for its crudness. For many, Stern was fearless. For others, he was offensive. And in 2008, Dolly Parton became the target of one of his most shocking stunts. In a disturbing radio segment, Stern's team took clips from Dolly's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, and edited them together to create a fake interview, one that made it sound like Dolly was saying vulgar, racist, and deeply inappropriate things. They spliced her real voice into phrases that mocked fellow artists like Kenny Rogers and Linda Ronstadt, and even made crude jokes about her own body. The bit was meant to be funny, but it was anything but. It was cruel, tasteless, and completely out of line. Stern's crew laughed it off on air, but for Dolly and her fans it was devastating, a deliberate attack on her reputation. Dolly, who almost never responds to controversy, was heartbroken and furious. She released a rare public statement saying, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life. I'm shocked by what Howard Stern did to me. I would never say something so rude again in a million years." That's when people started to respond. She called the segment disgusting and even said, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this." Fans were very angry. Country radio stations and longtime fans defended Dolly's character on message boards and in comments. People from outside the country scene stood by her. Howard Stern didn't give up, though. He didn't say sorry or show regret. Instead, he laughed it off and said, "Pew,"